Hello, everybody, and welcome to Building Bridges, Discovering Your Path to Peace. Today, I'm absolutely elated to have my dear friend, Dr. Ashok Prasad, as my guest. It would take the whole program to discuss and tell you about all of his accomplishments, but he's a psychiatrist, pediatrician, a lawyer, a geneticist. He studied at Harvard and Cambridge and was even in Dalhousie University right here in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
For a very short time, yeah.
Welcome, Ashok. It's so lovely I haven't seen you in some time, so it's wonderful to see you here on the video. You look well.
Nice to see you here, and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Well, there are many people who already know about your family's history, your illustrious history. But I would like you to talk a little bit about your great-grandfather, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who was the first president of India. Would you tell us a little bit about him, who he was, and what your relationship was with him?
Well, first of all, I might add over here that I wouldn't rate, well, he was my great-grandfather, so I wasn't very old when he passed away. So I do have certain memories there. I certainly do have memories. And, well, I'd be happy to share that with you.
Please.
But one of the things that he was very, very particular about is that he never allowed any of his family members to perhaps bask in reflected glory, so we were not allowed to use his name. That was very, very clear, even in the school. Although it was hardly a secret, everybody knew that, but we were never allowed to perhaps misutilize the connection that we had. I stayed at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, that's the president's house over there, and it was very well known that I was coming from there, but I was treated, well, it was very important. The instructions were very, very clear that I was going to be treated as any other student, any other student in that particular institution.
Well, I guess that accounts for your humility even up till today.
Well, that depends on who you ask. Many people wouldn't find me humble. In fact, they don't see that humility.
Oh, wow. And what's fascinating about it all, too, is that, of course, this was the time of Mahatma Gandhi and Jinnah and the partition and all of those things that divided India, even causing those issues today, right?
Well, that was certainly, it was a hopeless situation. It was a no-win situation. Certainly, it was a no-win situation. And that there couldn't have been any winners. We could probably, quibble about hypothetical situations that they might have been. But the situation, whether it was such, the British had decided to leave India. They had given India a few weeks to perhaps prepare.
Well, why was India? Why was Britain leaving India? By the way.
Well, I suspect one of the problems was that after the war, they were so economically hit that it was not economically sound to perhaps hold on to colonies. And the biggest colony, of course, was India.
Right.
That I suppose was the prime reason. That there were, of course, other things. That there were certain people in the Labour Party that assumed power immediately after the war. They were held being supporters of Indian freedom movements. They were passionately working for decolonization. So that may have played a part. But I happen to believe that it probably was something to do with holding on to colonies not being economical. It was so badly hit at the time.
I see.
That probably, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was involved in the negotiations with Jinnah and others.
Yes.
Well, he was the president of the Congress Party at the time, which was supposed to take over power. And the Jinnah Rajendra Prasad Pact was the basis on which the partition was effected.
Right.
Then again, he was actually writing he was the president of the Constituent Assembly, So he was drafting the constitution at the same time.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And
so
that
those were the things.
yes, and that constitution had a reflection of the Irish constitution. Is that correct?
Well, one of the things that was done at that time when the Constituent Assembly was elected was that the first thing that when Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected the president of the Constituent Assembly, which was given the mandate to draft the constitution, that he asked the secretary of the Constituent Assembly, a very able gentleman called Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao, to have studied all the constitutions that were available,
yes,
and work out which would be applicable in the Indian context, and then perhaps to have a discussion on that in the Constituent Assembly. So that was a Herculean task, and the Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao did a stellar job, and he doesn't get the credit for his efforts. In fact, his efforts were truly spectacular.
yes.
And then they found that Ireland, well, the Irish Constitution, perhaps, I mean, the Indian freedom fighters were always in regular correspondence with Eamon de Valera, the Irish statesman. He was a regular correspondent with Nehru. He was a regular correspondent with Dr. Rajendra Prasad.
Why was that? I'm just so curious about the connection. What initially happened that?
Well, de Valera had visited India, and he had built up some very strong personal links with several leaders in the freedom movement. And then again, I suspect there may have been some underlying anti-British sentiment.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. You know, it's like
I'm sure that played a part. I'm sure that certainly played a part over there. Yeah, because as they say, nothing pleases an Irishman more than the discomfiture of the British. I don't know if that is true, but that certainly was there. I mean, it was a common sentiment when I was in Ireland.
Yes, right. And so when you were in Ireland, you were a pediatrician at that time, is that right?
That's true. Well, towards the end, I had moved to psychiatry after obtaining the membership of the Royal College. I had decided to move to psychiatry because 6 children were not really my cup of tea. I mean, they had become very, very clear. I decided but then I didn't really want to leave it midway. If I wanted to switch over from one specialty to another, that was primarily after acquiring that specialist qualification, not before that.
I see. So you were studying psychiatry at the University of Edinburgh, right?
That's true.
Yes. Yes. So it was after that you went to Ireland, is that correct?
No, much before that. In fact, I was in Ireland before I moved there.
Okay. And when you were in Ireland, I remember you telling me the story of your friends that when the bombing in 1970, what was it?
Well, there were plenty. In fact, I was in Galway at that time, which was not very far from Sligo. And that was the time when Lord Mountbatten was blown up. And plus, again, there were quite a few. I mean, practically every day you used to listen about IRA bombings in some part or the other. I mean, the Irish Republic was by and large insulated. But on the other hand, there were, I mean, like in Sligo is very much part of Irish Republic. That is where, in Gorakhpur, that is where Lord Mountbatten was blown up, really.
Yes. But you had friends who were...
There were others. I mean, the interesting part was when I was in Dublin for a short while, one of the general practitioners there, he had the same first name as myself. And his son was born at the time. So, he had an Irish wife. Ashok Prasad had an Irish wife. And they held a party. Little was I to realize that this particular newborn was eventually going to turn out to be the Irish Prime Minister.
Is that right?
Gorakhpur.
Ah,
He's the prime minister. He's the prime minister now.
the most recent one now. He's gay. That one.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that?
His father was a colleague. His father was a general practitioner.
I see.
And he had the same name as myself.
Oh, oh, amazing, isn't it?
He had an Irish wife.
Everything is connected. I'm sorry, go ahead.
He had an Irish wife. His wife was a nurse, an Irish nurse.
Yes, yes, I see.
I didn't really realize that. And then again, but one of the most notable features was, of course, when I was working in Castlebar, that is County Mayo. One day, there was an old gentleman who was admitted to the hospital. I wasn't aware of that. In fact, I attended. And then he paid me a compliment, which I didn't realize. The pressmen were noting is still there on the net, in fact. He said that the future of medicine is safe in your hands, with a very, very distinctly German accent. His name was Ernst Chain. And then it's only when he died, I was informed that he was a recipient of the Nobel Prize along with Fleming and Florey for discovery of penicillin. So
yes, and he had kudos, accolades for you, yes?
Well, that was something, and I was in my 20s, so that is something that, of course, I cherish.
Well, you know what?
He was a German. He was, of course, a German British, a Jewish.
Yes, yes. Well deserved, my friend. Really.
It couldn't have been. It was probably his generosity, because it couldn't have been well deserved. With a 20-year-old youngster, you don't really shower him with that compliment.
Right.
But it was generosity more than my own capabilities. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you cherish it still today. That's really lovely. Well, you've had all kinds of interesting experiences, Ashok. You know, I was reading.
I've led a full life. Yeah.
Well, with
my old age, I might say I've led a reasonably full life.
Yeah, but Dr. Christian Bernard, you were a friend of his and in constant communication also.
That was much later. That was when I was in Edinburgh. I worked with a professor of psychiatry over there, Henry Walton. Henry Walton was a professor of psychiatry in Edinburgh, and he was Christian Bernard's classmate in the University of Cape Town medical school. And that Christian was actually the best man at Henry's wedding.
I see.
So he used to come over. He used to come over to Edinburgh and stay at Henry's place. That is where I actually met him. And then again, I mean, it was something. But I didn't get on very well with Henry.
Oh dear.
I got on reasonably well. In fact, Henry and myself towards the end had a falling out. But we maintained, Christian and myself maintained links.
I see. I see. Well, you know, it makes me think about in my past, I was familiar with and got to know relatively well Dr. Thomas Starzl, who is the guru of liver transplantation. Started out with kidneys and then went to liver. And of course, my daughter, having had biliary atresia, died from that. And I formed the Children's Liver Foundation. So I was very involved with him. So his name was not a Christian Bernard for sure, but certainly well known in the medical community as a pioneer in transplantation. So
yeah, he had other attributes as well. I mean, he was unlike many medical practitioners, including myself. We are probably introverted. He was an unashamed extrovert. And then again, I mean, he was a brilliant speaker. He, of course, was innovative. And above all, he had those film star looks. I mean, one particular nurse pointed out that he was Robert Redford, Rock Hudson, and Paul Newman rolled into one.
Oh dear.
Certainly had a way. He certainly had a way with the fair gender.
I'll bet. Amazing. He had it all, right? Yeah.
He had it all. Plus, of course, he was a sportsman. And his daughter, I mean, he was exceedingly proud of his daughter, Deirdre, who was the South African water skiing champion.
I see. Oh, wow. Wow. Cool. And so,
And he was virulently anti-apartheid. I mean, the South African government did not touch him because of his international stature.
Well, that
But,
must have been dicey sometimes for him, though, right? Although maybe he didn't take it to heart.
Well, he used to maintain that he didn't win the Nobel in medicine primarily because he had a South African citizenship. No, I didn't. I don't agree with that. And plus, again, who remembers many Nobel winners in medicine? But Christian is always going to be remembered for the first human-to-human heart transplant that he effected.
Yes, yes, true, true. So, what was it that started you on your trek across the world? Because you've lived in 11 countries, right? So what was it that this young man, this medical student, what was it that sparked you?
Well, nothing particularly. It was just a zest for perhaps getting to know the world as much as I could. And it's amazing how misinformed the school textbooks are. The schoolboys are from if they confine themselves to the textbooks. On one of my journeys to Greenland, they asked me. I mean, I had been to Iceland. They took me to Greenland, and amazing. I mean, it's so embarrassing to admit that I asked them. Well, when they asked me what I wanted to see, I said I wanted to see an igloo. Now they started looking at me because I genuinely believed that an igloo still existed.
Well, you know what? That reminds me of a funny story. My first husband was from the US, New Jersey. He was going to school here in Halifax, St. Mary's University, when I met him. So he would tell his friends back home, I have a Canadian girlfriend. And, you know, she rides in the dog sled and all of this. They believed him. It was incredible. There's such ignorance all over the world about the rest of the world.
That is bizarre because Canada is just across the border.
I
For
know.
how many Indians do get an opportunity with Greenland? So probably that was probably understandable that I didn't really know what happened in Greenland at that time.
Yes, yes. Oh, well, you know what, but it's really a true story. They I don't know where they went to school or studied or whatever, but just
The Americans
ignorant.
generally tend to, I mean, it amazes me. There was a time when I was a professor at Columbia, and then I used to commute from Philadelphia. One particular evening, it got too late. I said, well, I don't really want to drive to the turnpike very fast because it was getting too foggy. And there was one particular student over there said, well, why do you have to drive through New Jersey? Without realizing that New Jersey was the only state that I had to traverse. I just had to cross the Lincoln Bridge and to New Jersey and then have to cross the bridge back to Philadelphia. That's
Right.
the extent of the geographical acumen in America, and that too in one of the top universities.
Yeah.
So that amazes me. That really amazes me.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? I came across a picture the other day of President Obama with Narendra Modi embracing and you know, and Obama namaste and all of that, and it was so lovely. And this is a few years back, and I remember I was living in India then, feeling so heartened, so excited about the world coming together and getting to know one another and breaking down the boundary, the boundaries, yes, the barriers. And now today, the world is in a worse mess than ever, and I would blame it on a particular political individual. And I just wonder, how do Indians feel about what's happening in the US now?
Well, I don't know if they probably, many Indians probably know in detail what's happening in US apart from what appears in the papers. Those who are based here, I mean, those who are located in the US or perhaps North America, they would know. But on the other hand, it's certainly a matter of concern when you have when you have somebody making some bizarre, the leader of the president of a country making some very bizarre statements, really bizarre statements.
Yes, yes, it's true. And in regard to what happened with Soleimani, the Iranian who was assassinated by Trump.
Well, in a world with very few rules, you've got to stick to the rules that are already there. Otherwise, there would be an absolute disaster. I mean, Soleimani certainly was no angel. But is it anybody's case that one particular country has the moral authority to go about knocking off people that it doesn't believe
Yes.
are true angels that way? I mean, that in a world with very few rules, we've got to stick to the ones that are already there.
Yes, yes. And now that I'm recalling different things you told me over the years, that your father was a judge and he believed in capital punishment, and you are completely against it. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yes. So that must have been challenging sometimes for you and for him,
well,
I suppose.
it is something that I always believed in, that nobody should be in a position to perhaps, except in self-defense, should be in a position to pronounce the death sentence on another. I mean, it's something that's very,
Yes,
that doesn't agree with me
yes,
from my aesthetic standpoint.
yes,
But that has always been my position. I knew my father was doing his job.
yes.
That is something that I could never agree with him.
Right, right. Yeah, I take your position regarding the death penalty. I don't think it's, I don't morally right. It's just.
Yeah, apart from that as well, I don't think it works. I don't think it works. It works as a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people tend to ask me how I would react if somebody close to me was murdered brutally.
Yes.
Now, I can't say that I'd be absolutely, well, that I have contemplated all the possibilities, but from whatever possibilities that I've been able to contemplate in fairly good detail,
Yeah.
I would say that I don't think my views would change.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When we first started building bridges, discovering your path to peace, I was posing 3 questions to everybody prior to even doing these shows. And that is, can there be peace in the absence of justice? Can there be justice in the absence of equality? And can there be equality in the absence of understanding? So what do you think about any or?
There cannot be lasting peace. There can be short-term peace, really, but there cannot be lasting peace in the absence of justice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want lasting peace, yeah.
How do we get justice, Ashok? You're a lawyer also. How do we get justice?
Well, you have to make sure that people understand that they don't inflict on the others, that they do not want the others to inflict upon them. That is what justice is, the way I look at it.
Yes. How does it impact you?
It's a very Jewish idea. I'm sure it's present in other religions as well, but Judaism stresses on that very clearly, that you don't inflict on others what you don't expect the others to inflict upon yourself.
Well, certainly all of the Christian religions say that. You know, do unto others as you would have them do
Christian
unto
religions
you.
go a little bit further. Christian religions say, okay, irrespective of what, I mean, like it was that something that Gandhi used to say. There's just somebody slaps you on the cheek, you offer the other cheek. Now, that is what the Sermon on the Mount generally
Yes, true,
pays to.
true.
The Judaism doesn't. I mean, it doesn't agree with that position.
I see. Yeah, it's very interesting because my take on all of this is we'll never have peace without understanding how similar we are. That it doesn't matter our religion, our culture, our background, whatever. We're human first.
Sure, sure. And that is what Christian, I mean, that is what it may or may not be widely known that when he decided to transplant the first human heart into the recipient, Louis Washkansky, the donor was a black man in apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was almost blasphemy there in an apartheid country that used to practice apartheid on an unapologetic manner, in a fairly unapologetic manner in 1967.
Yes.
But there was a whole hue and cry, but Christians stuck to it. Said, "Okay, I'm going to transplant that."
Yes.
But I mean, it's only when they discovered that the heart was not in a shape to be transplanted that he had to look for another, and then he found a girl who was brain dead. And then again, there were some objections. How would a woman's heart be transplanted into a man?
Heaven forbid.
1967, 53 years ago, 52 years ago.
Not so long ago. Not so long ago, is it? Really?
Not so long.
No, not at all. Have we moved beyond that?
No, well, I hope so, because I mean, there has been, for instance, all my organs are donated. I carry my donor's card wherever I go.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't care. Well, I don't have a say into who receives my organs then.
Yes, of course.
If I receive an
Absolutely.
organ,
You give to serve. Yeah. Now, you're a Vedantist. Yes? Are you?
Sorry? I'm a Vedantist, yeah, I'm a Vedantist.
Yes. Would you take a moment and just explain what that means exactly?
Vedanta is a very, normally it cannot be explained in a moment. I mean, I'll have to delve into it, and I probably would need hours rather than a few seconds. But it stresses, I mean, there are 6 different schools of Indian philosophy, ancient Indian philosophy. Vedanta is the highest. I mean, you start off with the Sankhya, then you move on to Vaisheshik, then you move on to Yoga, then you move on to Nyaya, then Mimamsa, and after that Vedanta. Vedanta is really the highest of that, which emphasizes on spiritual unity. So you have to perhaps operate on the assumption that there is an absolute spiritual unity between 2 human beings. And I mean, although the best known proponent of Vedanta is, of course, Swami Vivekananda, but I find another gentleman who visited and lived in America for 2 years teaching practical Vedanta. His name was Swami Ram Tirth. He was a professor of mathematics, Swami Ram Tirth. He appears to be more, he appears to be easier to understand.
I see.
He died at the age of 33. He didn't really live very long. 33.
Oh my, wow.
And, he lived for 2 years in America.
I see.
He probably is the most convincing proponent of Vedanta that I know of, Swami Ram Tirth.
Yes, yes.
At the turn of the 20th century.
I see. My experience in India opened my mind and my heart to so many things that were actually inside me that I didn't realize. And so it was touching on all these different nerves within me. And I allowed it to flow. And I was a beneficiary of so many amazing experiences. And India was, and still is, very close to my heart. And the greatest thing of all was the people that I met. Just amazing, wonderful people.
I would say.
Including you. But, you know.
Well, I have learned.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I myself learned, the point of visiting so many countries is that you probably learn something new, and you learn a new perspective everywhere that you go to. And
Yes.
then you realize that every individual has something unique to every unique. You don't station or inherent superiority of one particular culture over the other.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And so I always tell young people and old people too, go someplace else. Experience life in another country, in another culture, whatever, only to come back and realize how much we are all alike. But the differences are what are like a painting, you know? They give us expression, they give us depth, all of those wonderful things that we wouldn't experience otherwise. So for me, the path to peace is communication with understanding and an open mind. And
I agree.
so,
Who could quibble with that?
yeah, and it is simple, and yet we make it so complicated. And you're a psychiatrist, so what are we all afraid of, Ashok? What are,
Well, that point is that perhaps whether the idea is that if we don't probably understand the person before us, if we are not empathic to the person before us, then we have to develop a capacity. Then, of course, we have, working towards a problem that may have some, that will probably escalate to dimensions that we can't really control.
yes, yes. And I just want everybody to be aware is that you contribute a lot of your time to working with poor people, with the Dalit in India, in Gorakhpur, where you
Well,
live.
that is the least that can be done.
Pardon?
I've had my share of good fortune. It's up to the others. I've had more than my share.
Yes.
That is the least that I can give back to the community.
Yeah. Well,
That is a very
service is the greatest gift. And I believe that's what we're all on this earth for, to serve others. And that's where we get our greatest glory, as far as I'm concerned. That's what it's all about, eh? So what would you like to tell people today? Your closing thoughts on how can we attain peace in this world? What can we do?
Well, we have to learn from the other, we have to learn to start thinking from the other person's perspective as well. And we don't have to be dismissive about another individual. So once we start doing that, we realize we try and understand that person. Once we understand that person, then we find that many of the ideas that we found, that we had entertained, probably did not have as sound a basis as we had imagined. And that happens to the other person as well.
Yeah.
So that is how you build
Yeah.
relationships, really. That is the way, that is the only way to build lasting relationships.
Yes, I agree. I agree, and it's wonderful. And I'm really happy that I have a relationship with you, my friend.
Likewise.
Yes, yes. And so I will bid you adieu, and I will thank everybody for watching us today, Building Bridges, Discovering Your Path to Peace. Stay tuned. We'll have Ashok back. All right?
Thank you so much.
Namaste, my friend.